Welcome. We'll get started shortly. Before we begin, here's how to earn continuing professional education credit for attending this session. There are no polling questions or attendance checks. Instead, you will demonstrate your knowledge by taking a brief multiple-choice quiz using the Earmark app. Visit earmark.app in your web browser. You can also download the mobile app by scanning the QR code on the screen. Log in, or if you're new, create your free account. Be sure to use a valid email address because that's where we'll send your course completion certificates. From the home screen, scroll down to find the course. You can also tap the magnifying glass icon to search for the course. Tap on the course artwork, then the Enroll button. On the Course tab, you'll find the recording and quiz questions. Complete the quiz to earn your CPE certificate. It takes us a few days to create the course on the app, so if you are attending this session live, please wait a few days. We'll email you a link to the course when it is ready. If you have questions or need help, email us at support@earmarkcpe.com. And now, on to the event.
Hi, everyone. This is Mark from Panalitix, and a very warm welcome to you to this webinar on leadership. I hope you're seeing my screen right now because I've got a few things I'd like to share with you. I know it's a busy time. It's always a busy time for accountants, right? But I'm grateful that you have an interest in this subject, whether you're watching the live version or the recording. This is our first webinar on the Earmark platform. So a big shout out to the team at Earmark for hosting us. I'm going to give a quick introduction of Panalitix and myself because some of you may not be familiar with us. And then a little bit of background on the research we have done, which forms the basis for what we're going to discuss today, which is really around the habits, the systems, the processes of some successful leaders in the accounting industry. And I hope you'll be able to take something out of that, as well as a couple of resources which may help you on your way in the lifetime journey of leadership. No one probably has figured out leadership 100% in spite of the millions of books and so on the topic. So I hope this can play a small part in your journey towards effective leadership. So let's get into a quick background on Panalitix. You know, we weren't always called Panalitix, but the business that we operate now has been for 20 years now working with only accountants. We don't work with other professional services businesses. We are headquartered here in Australia. I hope you can visit one day if you haven't already. But most of our business is in North America. That's both Canada and the United States. We have some clients up in Northern Europe. That's UK, Finland, and Sweden, which is a fun place to visit too. And of course, our neighbors down under here in New Zealand, we have clients across there as well. And we offer some coaching programs. These are sometimes groups of firms, 6, 8, or 10 firms in a group with a similar curriculum, some similar goals. We also offer coaching on a one-to-one basis and some short courses. Those short courses might be 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 12 weeks, etc., on a very specific topic. And I hope you get to visit our Learning Hub. It's available. There's a free subscription. There's a modest investment to be made as well in the Learning Hub to get more content, but it's a digital community and it's our learning environment where we have literally thousands of assets which you can tap into, which can help you in your business. The kinds of challenges or opportunities which our clients are dealing with include creating capacity. That means making the protagonists of an accounting firm less busy. How can we get things done more efficiently, more productively? How can we increase profit through better workflow, through better use of technology, better process, better systems, better management structures, etc. And if we get that right, we find that most accounting businesses can grow rapidly, especially in this environment. Very few of our clients are not getting a lot of leads or able to convert those leads. So there's huge growth opportunity as well as by acquisition if you choose to go down that pathway. And that's all very well, but we don't want to create a business which is heavily dependent on one or a couple of people. So we have programs to help the owners reduce dependence on them, free up their time so that they can have a more balanced lifestyle, or they can invest that time into growth. And at some point, every business will think about transitioning ownership. Maybe that's internal to some of your colleagues, a management buyout. Maybe it's to a third-party investor like another accounting business or a private equity firm. So that's the kind of topics that we work on with our clients. I have a confession to make, which is I'm not an accountant. I probably know the least about accounting of anyone on this webinar. I'm originally a lawyer, but the bulk of my career has been entrepreneurial, founding or co-founding businesses which sell solutions or software or services to major multinational clients. I was based in Japan for a long time, and I exited 3 of those businesses over an 18-year period. The buyers were on 2 occasions listed companies, and on 1 occasion a private equity-based business. And I then got involved with Panalitix about 5 years ago, and I'm thoroughly enjoying figuring out how we can build the premier service and solution provider to the accounting industry globally. It's a lot of fun. So that's a quick snapshot on myself and Panalitix, but let's get into the substance of what we're talking about today. And I do want to emphasize that this is backed by some research, some qualitative research. And what we set out to do was to find some of those actions or systems or activities which leaders in accounting businesses, small, medium-sized accounting businesses, are implementing, which are really making a significant difference. And as I said before, we know that you have access to thousands of leadership books and courses and live sessions with brilliant leaders, and all of those can add a lot of value. But if we hear straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak, what are leaders doing and what's succeeding for them? So this was qualitative research. It wasn't a huge group of respondents, but there were 12 accounting businesses, and a couple of them offered 2 or 3 leaders that enabled us to get to a respondent base of 15 leaders, all based in North America, a couple in Canada, the bulk in the United States. And what was interesting about all of these people is that they had no formal leadership training. Most of what they had learned on the job, often by errors, by mistakes, by things they could have done better, but their knowledge of leadership had really come from doing business. And we felt it was important that we spoke to leaders of growing businesses. Now, this is significant because we were looking for leaders who were going to lead their business to a different place, a bigger business. Maybe that's top line revenue, maybe it's profitability, maybe it's launching new services or entering new markets. They had plans to grow. That was a criteria because, frankly, we come across accounting business leaders who are pretty happy with the status quo. They don't want to grow. They're making enough money, they have enough clients, they have an adequate team. And that's not the kind of leader we wanted to speak with here. We wanted to speak to those with growth plans. The smallest team being led by these leaders was a team of 6, and the largest was 25. Interestingly, the one with 6 was by no means the smallest in revenue terms. They were about the mid-range in revenue sense. So the number of people doesn't necessarily correlate with the size of the top line revenue in these businesses. They all had some remote employees. There were no firms that were entirely virtual, but they had some remote employees. So they had the challenges associated with remote employees, and they all had some offshore employees. We are a big advocate of using offshoring, especially in this extremely challenging hiring, recruiting environment. So they had some offshore employees. So that gives you a flavor of the kinds of teams that were being led and the kinds of businesses that we had access to for this research. I'm going to get into some of those habits that were being demonstrated by these accountants. And by the way, if along the way you have some questions, why not pop them into the chat box, and we'll try, if we have time, to look at those towards the end. So let me get into this. And what I want to stress here is there's a lot of ideas I'm going to share, but what's really important is that these can be implemented systematically into a business. You may take out some ideas here, but if you're going to benefit from these ideas, It's going to be about how you systematically implement these. And one of the leaders started a conversation, because we had some really robust conversations in the course of this research about the concept of mentorship to be distinguished from just telling people the answers. Now, what we often find in accounting businesses is the founder or one of the founders is kind of the technical expert. They are also the person who knows everything about the clients. They know everything about the business processes, the systems, the technology. They set up the software. So what happens? Every time one of your colleagues has a question, they wander down the hall or they get on email or on chat and say, hey, about this client, they seem to have this issue. What would you do? And what's really important as a leader is not to be that in-house Wikipedia, if you like, where you simply give the answer, but to help people on a pathway to finding the answers themselves. That's what mentorship is. And the benefit of this is that it creates some degree of self-sufficiency versus dependence, right? I mean, why would we bother to figure out things ourselves if we can just wander over and find the answer immediately? It's like having a calculator. There's no incentive to do division or multiplication on a piece of paper when you can just do it with a calculator. The trouble with that is that we're not empowering people to get better at problem solving. And this is a really important long-term benefit in an accounting business, is having people who will work out things for themselves, as well as the sense of accomplishment. Because if you can go back to your team and say, you know, I just watched how you tackled that problem today with a client, or perhaps a technical accounting issue, a tax issue, and I know that 6 months ago or a year ago or 3 years ago, you could never have done that, but you did it today. And that tells me that you're progressing in this organization. You are getting somewhere. I want to just share a quick quotation. And, you know, a lot of the essence in this research comes out of these quotations. And this accountant says, this may sound annoying, but I often answer team members' questions with a question, even as simple as, what do you think the answer is? Right? This kicks off their own problem-solving process, and I become just a guide or a coach or a mentor rather than an encyclopedia. So when I talked about systems and processes before, that's an example. When people approach you as leaders with their challenges and their questions, you might push it back to them in certain ways, and you might ask them to go and think about the answer and then bring them the answer, which you will evaluate. You still have the chance to give them some input. So an interesting idea there on mentorship in leadership for accounting. Now, this sounds rather simple, acknowledging value. And it is pretty simple because we all like acknowledgement and validation, right? It's something that enriches us and makes us a little bit more positive about what we're doing and what we'll do next. It also doesn't cost much to give, right? A simple, hey, great job on that client meeting, or a quick email to say, I was surprised at how well you handled that. It was brilliant. Well done. I hope you can keep doing that kind of work. It doesn't cost much. One of the challenges, as was pointed out in our research, is that we need to do this in a way that is real, is authentic. Praise should only be given when praise is due. Otherwise, people will not value that praise. And if we can then, now talking systems, if we can build this into the culture of recognizing and rewarding real value, the emphasis on real, we can make this not just about leaders and their teams, but we can actually make our teams reward their colleagues for value. And that's becomes systematic, and it becomes part of the culture. Here is one way that an accounting business, I think they're on the West Coast, does this. They start the weekly management meetings with what they call success stories, right? And one team member describes a recent win they've observed in the business. And that means that they need to acknowledge other people, because it's not their win, it's the win of a colleague. And this might be someone that they don't work so closely with. And what they've done over the years they've been doing this is reveal some really interesting accomplishments. They don't have to be huge. It could be, well, I took care of a client issue which had the potential to grow into something much more significant, but I took care of it. It doesn't have to be game-changing or life-changing, but this creates a positive mood and a positive atmosphere. It gets people to be more aware of what their colleagues are doing. So acknowledgement of value as a function of leadership can be systematized in the business. Now, I have seldom spoken to an accountant, and I've spoken to a lot, who are excited by performance reviews. That's whether they are the reviewer or the reviewee. But I'm afraid to say that we feel, and our respondents in the research felt very strongly, that this was something that should be very well organized and process-driven and systematic, right? And what are we really doing in performance reviews? We're helping to set goals, and then we're following up to see whether we've accomplished those goals, not just for the individual, but also for the business, because the individual's goals should be, of course, consonant with those of the organization. And if we do that effectively, we will be providing some kind of career pathway, because, you know, a lot of accountants ask us, how do I increase retention? Or how do I make my business more attractive to new hires? And one of the key things is to show a career pathway. This is where you are today. But if you work in our business, you will learn certain things which will enable you to get to a different place. That place may be more authority, more knowledge, more money, more benefits, and so on. And so a career pathway sets that out and clears out the obstacles. So if we're doing this effectively in our performance reviews, we have a good chance of getting people excited about what they're doing. That means career momentum for the entire team. One of the respondents said this: I used to dread performance reviews. We had no process. And I felt like it was a negotiation. So I was on the defensive. Have any of you ever felt that? This idea that it's adversarial, and you need to win, right? That's exactly what we're trying to get away from here. Then we change the approach so the employee would be ready. So the employee needs to prepare to discuss their goals, strengths, weaknesses, and their training needs, as well as their accomplishments and so on. And that led to much more constructive and even enjoyable discussions. Imagine if you felt you were on the same side of the table as the employee, working towards getting what they want to get out of their career, because in so doing, the business is going to get what it needs to get as well. So we have a lot of systems in Panalitix which organize performance reviews. By the way, we don't believe in the annual performance review. It's simply too long. People want more feedback, and we need to build a meeting cadence so that there's more frequent interaction between managers and employees, so that there's more feedback. But we also want to make it more conversational and less one way. So there's a lot to do to make performance reviews effective. And I think this can be a major differentiator in a lot of accounting businesses. Now, here's something that I didn't anticipate out of the research. In fact, I found this really interesting. Leaders are busy, right? Often in accounting businesses, you are running your own client portfolio. You're thinking of cash flow in the business. You're thinking of payroll. You're thinking of strategic things like the new system you want to implement. You might be thinking of an acquisition you want to do. You're thinking of hiring. You're thinking of terminating. You have some difficult clients. You're problem solving and so on. And yet your employees might come to you with their own set of problems or challenges. And what we need to look like as leaders is that we are completely available and focused on those needs of our employees, our team members, especially, or even when we're consumed by other challenges. This is tough, isn't it? This is about time management, but it's also about investing to show that we are absolutely available, because we all know, I bet you've all had this experience, that you're talking to someone and you're not sure that they're really listening to you. Their brain is somewhere else, right? And that's not how we want to present ourselves as leaders. And we need to be focused on what's in front of us, especially when interacting with our team. And yes, there will be some team members who probably might waste your time. This is the fact. So we need to be very We need to discriminate between those that we want to invest in the long term and those we don't. That's the nature of leadership, is making those kinds of judgments. I was really interested in this idea, and I asked one of the accountants to explain it more. And he told us this little story, which I'll share with you today. He said he had a senior accountant who was very effective at his work, very productive, a good team member, and good with clients. But his home life was, let's say, complicated. You know, many of our employees, they're not just our employees in a work environment. They also bring with them the implications of their life outside of their employment, their home lives. And this individual started asking the leader for family advice over a series of lengthy conversations. I think he said they used to go out for coffee and then again for coffee, and then they try to have dinner and these kinds of things. It was a lot of time. And the leader said, I didn't really know how to help because these are complex subjects, and frankly, didn't feel this was a good use of time which was consumed by discussing this person's family life. But we talked a lot, and later he was grateful and said this helped him get back on track. And what this leader expressed here is that in the moment, he was absolutely available to this employee who was a high-profile employee in the organization. And looking back on it a year later, that employee was grateful. He felt that he had someone to talk to, and the business benefited from retaining this person. And the leader felt that that was a good outcome for him and the organization. So being present, being available in the moment is an important part of leadership. Now, here's a big one. This is really big. And if you forget everything else we talk about today, think about delegation and how you can systematically delegate work in your organization, because this is not an option. It's mandatory that leaders are able to get stuff off their plate, because that frees up their time to do the things that they need to do as leaders, because leadership takes time. It's also part of the training or the empowerment of others. It's absolutely critical. And if I were to wish one thing for lots of accounting businesses that we deal with, it's that leaders could get better at delegation. Now, if I asked you, when did you learn the most in your career? What was the series of events or event that propelled you forward and built a lot of your knowledge? I doubt many of you would say, well, clearly it was year 3 at university when we did all those courses on that, or some other study you did. It was probably something that you were thrown into, the deep end of a project or a very challenging environment where you didn't have much supervision. It was extremely challenging, but you had to step up and get things done. This is when our ability to learn is most pronounced. And so I think as leaders, we want to expose people to that kind of environment. It doesn't have to be quite as challenging, but the more challenging it is, the more likely some people are going to grow their skills. So what we want to do when we delegate, and by the way, this is not I don't want to dwell on delegation too much, which is a huge subject, but we want to make sure we are sending work in the direction that is suited to the recipient. And I wonder how many of you are familiar with the idea of finders, minders, and grinders. Let me give you a quick reminder or a quick overview. Finders have interpersonal skills, communication skills. They like talking to people. They're often good at selling and building relationships and so on. They're critical in an accounting business to manage our client relationships and look for new work, satisfy clients, retain clients, and so on. Now, minders are much more systematic and managerial by nature. They like processes. They like quality control. They like delegating work. They like communicating internally with their teams. They like scheduling the work and planning capacity in your organization to ensure the right people are doing the work. All of those are managerial roles, and they're really, really good at that. And then we have grinders who just love doing the work. Clear everything out of my way and let me focus on creating this the set of accounts or completing this tax return, right? I just want to get the work done, and they are what we might term grinders, right? And in an accounting business, we absolutely need this blend of skills. So when we are delegating work, we want to make sure we're sending it in the right direction. And that is probably mostly about the organizational structure, which I'll come to in a second. Here's what we often hear from accountants. The toughest lesson for me was learning to delegate. It seems so impractical to get the people to do things I could do in half the time. Haven't you heard that before? Why don't I just do this myself? It'll be much quicker. But then I learned to focus on my balance sheet versus the P&L, right? This is building value in your teams, their knowledge, versus just short-term profitability, which is just about saving time. If we can build the skills of others, we build more valuable organizations. But it takes time and patience. And it will help with employee retention, because people actually like to learn. When they progress, they feel more rewarded in their organization. So these days, I ask the question, how can I get out of doing this task and then try to delegate as a habit, right? So habitual delegation, but doing it intelligently to people who will be good recipients of that work is important. I want to spend a little bit of time on organizational structure here, because I think this is so critical. Please bear with me as I think through how accounting businesses might organize themselves. Let's do this with a blank sheet of paper and think about your organization as we go through this. What is really important in your organization? Obviously, getting the work done accurately, on time, and productively, efficiently. I talked about grinders, and examples of this are our senior accountants, our accountants, bookkeepers. Maybe you have payroll professionals. We need to configure a team who understands. They are technicians. They understand what we need to do. But because there's more than one of them, we also need to ensure they're properly managed. In accounting, this means capacity planning, scheduling the work, allocating the work, reviewing the work for quality, communicating internally to keep us all on track, having systems, processes, and technology to get that done as efficiently as possible. And we can call that a production manager. Now, if we only had that, we would be neglecting the key aspect of our accounting business, which is our clients. We need to manage them so that they're satisfied, because we can find more opportunities among them. And we might have a person we call a senior client manager. Don't worry about the titles. And they lead this team. They might be assisted by someone more administrative. And now we have the beginnings of a team in an accounting business that can probably deal with the traffic, the work that we get from our clients, and do it very effectively. That's not a business by itself. We still need leadership on how to grow this business. And that's where I'd like to see the partners of accounting businesses more focused. Many of them get themselves embroiled in those other skills of finding, mining, grinding, and they don't have the time to manage their businesses and lead their businesses effectively. So we actually want to delegate that work, finding, mining, grinding, as much as we can to our teams. And if we do that effectively, we can scale our businesses by building more teams. We have firms in Panalitix who have built multiple teams, 5, 6, 7 teams under one owner. We don't have to scale by bringing on new partners to do the work. If we do this effectively, by the way, we can start to measure things which are really important in accounting businesses. Let me give you a quick snapshot of that. So we have our teams, our senior client manager and who's assisted doing finding. We have our senior production manager who's doing minding, managing our team of grinders who are doing the actual work. So there's the team that we were discussing. By the way, we can locate these people onshore or offshore. The implications of that will be slightly different. We know what these people cost us, right? Which is the compensation plus benefits. And then we set targets for their productivity. Productivity defined as how much work they do, which is billable. And we want that to be very high for our grinders, because we take away distractions from them so they can just focus on doing the work. But for our finders, we're willing to accept lower productivity because we want them to invest in client relationship building and so on, right? And we know what sort of fees that they can derive given that level of productivity and their experience and so on. So now, if we aggregate that, we can look at the revenue that this team is deriving for our business. We can look at the cost of goods sold and therefore the gross profit percentage, 67%, not bad. We'd like to see that up around 70%. But we can also look at some other metrics like growth. Has this team grown the revenue from the portfolio of clients? Have they brought on new work from those existing clients? And what's the level of satisfaction among clients, perhaps measured by Net Promoter Score, and the level of satisfaction by team, because a happy team with high morale will tend to perform well. So I mention all of this in the context of delegation and organizational structure and getting really clear on what you're measuring in your organization as a leader. I'll move back to our research. And this was another interesting concept. I think there's a balance to be achieved where, on the one hand, as leaders, we need to keep some level of distance between ourselves and our employees. We can't simply be best of friends with everyone because that tends to create complications. But on the other hand, we need to be human and we need to be accessible. So this balance is one that is challenging, and I think there's a lot of nuance to this. I want to suggest to you a systematic way about thinking about this and going about it. And this was an accountant also on the West Coast who said, we ask people to set some goals unrelated to the business. So at the beginning of the year, they get people together and say, hey, what are you trying to achieve on a personal level in the next 12 months? And the idea is that the business will support them to get there in some form. So if someone says, well, I'd really like to learn a particular skill, the business will at least be supportive of them learning that skill and ask them questions and document it and try to create some level of accountability. So what they found was people were hesitant to open up at first. But when the partners started to disclose their goals, things changed. And one partner talked about books she wanted to read, and another mentioned learning to play jazz piano. Wow, that sounds like a challenge. But this has helped eliminate any of them and us mentality. Those were the words of this accountant. So think of leadership not as, well, we're the leaders and you're not, because that creates this divide. But we're all in certain things together. We all share an interest in creating a brilliant, robust organization for our clients, but also for ourselves. So that's an example of breaking down barriers by sharing things with the team. Now, another example, which sounds pretty obvious, but has a lot of nuance to it as well. So businesses are a function, a product of a number of rules, some of which are very well enunciated, are written down, are documented, are easy to understand, and others are a little bit more vague. These can take the form of a vision statement, the values, the mission statement, the business goals, which might mean that they may be numeric around profitability and a number of clients, the products you offer, the services you sell, and then the plans to get there, the tactical things that we need to do to achieve those goals. And of course, the processes and policies which help keep us on track. So that in aggregate is really the rules that leaders have to apply in the business. And of course, there's some degree of flexibility with those. But our job as leaders is, once we've formulated these rules, to help people stick to those rules, but they need to be applied in a way that's fair and consistent. And one of the ways to think about that is always to make the objective the clients, right? And this was the words of one of the accountants we interviewed on this, was when things get tricky in your discussions with employees, you might have a problem employee, you might have a complex problem to solve. If we can center our discussion around what's best here for the client or what's best for the business, it takes the personal nature of that discussion. And as you know, things can get personal in organizations. I don't think that's a bad thing, by the way. It means people care. It means people care about what they're doing. And that's when people get charged about about and emotional sometimes about what they're doing, it means they care. So that's not a bad thing. But if we can then solve that and move ahead by saying, look, what's the best thing for the client here? We can probably apply our rules in a consistent fashion with a key objective. So this accountant said, we had an accountant who simply wasn't performing no matter what we tried. I knew I had to do something, but there were always reasons to delay. We often see that, right? How many of you have waited too long to take action on a troublesome employee or client? I certainly have. Then I realized this was not just about me and the employee, but I was doing a disservice to the entire organization. I was not sticking to our stated value of always excellence, and that needed to change. So this was really interesting because this accountant points out that these kinds of leadership challenges are not binary in nature. In other words, it's not just you, the leader, and the employee, because you can rest assured that the other employees are watching carefully how this is unfolding and how you are taking action or not taking action, and they will form their views of the organization and you as a leader based on how you behave. So one way to make that more simple is to create rules, vision, goals, plans, etc., which are clear, and then apply them rigorously and consistently across the organization in the best interests of the clients or the business itself. So interesting concept there. I want to move to some things which may help you going forward here. Panalitix runs a set of events, webinars like this. We're delighted to be on the Earmark platform. We also run our own mentoring programs. I mentioned that before. Some are group or some are individual. We also run courses periodically which tackle a particular topic. And because we're talking leadership today, I thought of something which may help you on your journey. Some of you are thinking of the next generation of leaders in your organization. So how are you going to bring them up? Perhaps you have very evolved leadership skills now, but you want to you have some aspiring leaders that you want to equip so that they can start to take on leadership roles in your organization. Our courses tend to have multiple modules. This one particularly has 3. Each of those has a particular theme, principles of leadership and communication, decision making, and so on. And then what we want is people to take a tangible benefit out of a course like this. In this case, a personal leadership development plan, because as we said at the beginning, leadership is a never-ending acquisition of knowledge and applying that knowledge to gain more experience so that we can constantly improve. The activities that we do are varied. There's role playing, there's discussion, there's quizzes and tests and so on, which help people. And I won't go through all of the details of this now, but there's a very clear curriculum which we have learned over many applications of this can help people to develop their leadership skills. So each of those modules, we get into a lot of detail. And these courses are run over particular dates. We have one of these coming up in the US. There are live sessions, and there are also, think of it as homework or post live sessions activities that you need to do. So for a relatively modest investment, you can put people, particularly in this case, aspiring leaders, through these courses so that they can grow their skills. It's typically good for the employees as well, because they feel part of something and they feel that they're acquiring more skills and knowledge as well. So something that might help you. I want to also mention something that you can do for free. I'm going to just share another tab here. I'm going to the Learning Hub. I just want to give you a quick sense of that. I hope that that is coming up now and you can easily see the Learning Hub on your screens now. This is the forum where Panalitix organizes all of its content that has been gathered over many, many years. You can see that there are different topics that are arranged here around vision, goals, plans, strategy, and measurement. We talked about that a little bit earlier. What you sell in accounting, a lot of our clients are looking to sell advisory services or higher margin services and to price those effectively. How you manage your clients, because we feel that many are reacting in communication and marketing and lead generation and effective sales. But today we're in the team development area. And a lot of what I've discussed is I talked about systems and processes, and a lot of that is available here in these areas. If I drill into, for example, organizational design and structure, remember we talked about finders, minders, and grinders, and we talked about how we should have client managers and production managers and our technical accountants. So all of this material is speaking to that. We have a kind of mini course on this. Notice that a lot of this is video enabled, so you can watch videos on that kind of material. Once you've built the team, getting people to work constructively in teams is really important, and we have a whole lot of material on that as well. Some of you will have the opportunity to take on more clients, and so you need to build more capacity in your organization, which can be done by either hiring or offshoring, but also improved workflow process. So we have a lot of material on that. And for others, you're thinking, this is all very well, but I want to work less in the organization. I want to reduce dependence on myself. So we have strategies and ideas which can help you to achieve that. I think that some of what we're discussing here is about clarity in roles. If I interviewed everyone in your teams and I asked them, what exactly is your job? Is it well defined? And is how you are measured well defined? I wonder how effectively people would respond to that question, right? So what we have in this section of Learning Hub is a whole lot of job descriptions, which define people's roles. And remember, we talked about the importance of the review, the performance review. We have a lot of material on how you can do that effectively as well. Hiring and offshoring, we have material on that, but you may want to spend some time in this management area where we deal with a whole lot of topics related to, for example, leadership, providing clear direction, a volunteer mindset, motivation and driving performance, and so on. Again, a lot of these are video enabled, team building, successful habits, and so on. So there's a lot of material which you could either share with team members or look at yourselves. Other features of effective leadership leaders will be around productivity, because at the end of the day, we have a finite resource, which is our time, and we have a lot of work to get through to drive productivity. So look at some of the topics we're dealing with here. I've talked about delegation, and I absolutely believe that is key. But the different meeting cadences in an accounting business, the daily huddle, if you're not familiar with that, the idea of getting your teams together daily for a very brief 3-question oriented discussion on what they have, calendar blocking, checklists and procedures, setting KPIs. Some of these are rather soft topics based on the literature that is out there, like some of you will know, deep work, managing stress, and so on. One of the ones that's the most popular here is around managing email, because how many of you have hundreds of emails or thousands of emails sitting in your inbox right now, which you're not entirely sure what to do with, but in some way it's a burden to you and you would like it to go away. So better practices in that area can help. These are all aspects of being an effective leader in an accounting business. Compensation, rewards and recognition. We talked about that earlier, and it's our view that in some cases, incentive plans can be very effective. But we often find that incentive plans, which are all about the money, are less effective than leaders want them to be. There's other ways to reward and recognize people which are more meaningful to them. Of course, people will accept more cash, but they want other career-related benefits as well. Internal communication. How much time do you spend in your organization on meetings right now, and are they really effective? And here's a whole section on performance reviews where we talk about those things. We're reinventing the annual performance review, for example, because we don't feel that that is an adequate way to give feedback and make your relations with employees sufficiently interactive and productive, right? So there's a lot to do in performance reviews. And because training, professional development is critical. Remember we talked about building the balance sheet of your business versus building the P&L. A P&L approach is simply about, let me maximize short-term profitability. In other words, why delegate anything? Let me just do the work. It'll be quicker. I'm good at it, and I'll maximize profitability. We don't think that's the best way to build a valuable organization and to reduce dependence on the owners. So one way is to build teams who are skilled, who are experienced, and that's a function of professional development, taking the time to invest in making people more competent. And what a lot of accountants say to us, which we don't agree with, is, well, yeah, but my team's not really up to it. They don't have the skills, they don't have the knowledge. And I stress to those accountants that we all started somewhere. We all started inexperienced and with very limited skills. And somehow we've got ourselves to a point where we're able to be effective. So it's not just in our best interest, but I feel it's kind of our duty to help our subordinates to get to a place where they're more effective. And because a lot of people are dealing with remote workers now, we have a lot of material on how to onboard them and how to manage them, how to train them, how to bring them into your teams, and so on. And to finish up, and I appreciate your patience and interest in this topic today. We may have time for a couple of questions after this, but most of leadership, we can think of it as this rather amorphous, vague concept, which is really about natural skill and ability. But I think we shouldn't think about it like that. We should think about it as very systematic, habitual, and process driven. And if that's the case, templates, checklists, systems, and processes become a really important part of leadership. So we have assembled literally hundreds of templates here on recruitment, onboarding, performance reviews, etc., which may help you to get better and more effective and more systematic about some of your activities in leadership. I'm going to close up my comments there and head back to see if we have any questions that anyone has launched. And yes, Annika, we will indeed be sharing the slides. We're very happy for you to have a look at these slides. I see we've got a question coming through on delegation. So yeah, I wish we had another 2 hours to talk about delegation, because I love that topic and I think it's absolutely critical. The question is, why is it so difficult? Let me just throw this idea out there. Some of us do not delegate because we actually like to be the person. We like to be the person who is the knowledge base in the firm. We're the founder of the firm. We grow a lot of technical knowledge about the clients, and we feel a little bit nervous to empower other people to have that knowledge because we think we may be diminishing our own value and our role in the business. Now, that is completely incorrect. In fact, we build a more valuable business. We build a business that is better for our clients if we are able to empower other people to take that work. So I don't know the people on this call, and that may not be you at all, but I can tell you, I work with a lot of accountants who are hoarding that knowledge and are afraid to move it, to share that knowledge effectively. The second reason it's difficult to delegate is it does take time. But as I've argued today, one of the best ways we can spend time in our organization is empowering others, because it's just simply good for us and good for the business, right? So we need to set aside the time to do that. We have some accountants we work with in the United States, and they've actually built a training program which is very rigorous. They set aside an hour twice a week where they take on juniors in the firm, and they look at some technical issues. They look at some client management issues, communication issues. These don't have to be giant things. Knowledge is acquired in small bites. It doesn't have to be a giant bite at the apple. So yeah, delegation is hard. I agree that it is difficult, but it's absolutely critical if we're to build valuable, powerful, robust organizations and reduce dependence on the owners. And if you want more on that, please take a look in the Learning Hub. We've got a lot of methodologies on delegation. I'd recommend, one more thing I want to say on delegation is you may not believe that you have things on your plate that you can delegate. And one thing we've done, and I can see some of our friends on this webinar that we've worked with on this very topic, and we've got them to make a list of the activities that they are doing in their firms, and to do that for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And it always yields interesting information as to exactly how you're spending time. You may be surprised. You may be surprised that you're spending time on things which you really oughtn't to be. We have owners of accounting business doing the payroll, paying the bills, dealing with the janitorial service provider, etc. Things which are taking their time away from what they could be doing in business building. I don't know if we have another question coming through. I'll be happy to try and deal with that if it's helpful. Otherwise, it's been a pleasure speaking with you on this absolutely critical topic of leadership. And I hope you got something out of those best practices which came from the mouths of successful leaders in accounting businesses. Please, most of what I showed you in the Learning Hub, it's free. Go there, have a look around. That will soon be clone enabled, or you'll have a way to ask questions and get direct feedback either by voice or by text. We're really excited by that development. We have other events coming up. And if you'd like to know anything more about Panalitix, my details are on the screen, as are those of my colleagues. Kim, get in touch. We love talking about accounting, the profession, and your businesses as well. So please be in touch, and thanks for joining. And once again, thanks to the Earmark team for having us today. It's been a pleasure. Looking forward to the next webinar. Thank you, guys. Have a great day. And I think, Joel, back to you.
Today's event has ended. To earn CPE, go to earmark.app or scan the QR code on the screen. Then log in or create your free account. Search for the course by tapping on the magnifying glass icon on the home screen and then entering the name of this event. It takes a few days to make the course, so if you're attending this event live, keep an eye out for an email letting you know when the course is available. Pass the quiz to earn your CPE, then tap the button to email yourself a certificate. Stay tuned for more events from Earmark. Thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you again soon.